Mr. Ryan Blumenthal.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, it's been extreme. Are you sure ESSA doesn't stand for the Extreme Society of South Africa? Anyway, it's a great honor to be here. So thank you for coming and giving us your Tuesday night. I hope it doesn't disappoint. I want to thank also Chris for putting this together and my team here. I mean, this is being filmed live for my YouTube channel, Ryan Blumenthal channel, at African Forensic Pathologist, and also Mr. Shylock from Rosebank Exclusive Books, who will be selling some of my books later. The stuff that I can't be talking about tonight is in those books. So yeah, so it's taken quite a bit to sort this out, but it seems to have come together. And tonight I've been asked to talk about lightning, because if I were to talk about anything else, you'd probably be triggered and never go out into the wilderness again. This is the reality, because apparently I'm not allowed to trigger anyone here tonight. So I hail from the University of Pretoria. This is my alma mater. I'm a forensic pathologist. This is me in my scrubs. Yeah, I've studied for about 23 years. I have 6 degrees. Did my PhD in lightning. Okay. I've done about 15,000 autopsies, so this would explain my personality here tonight and my nervousness running in and out with all these living people. My chief mission in life is to help advance forensics, because you know what, the time has come. The time has come now for, you know, we get such a perspective of life as forensic pathologists. It's time to communicate it to the public, scale it up, package it, and commercialize it. This is where we are. But you need to know what we're seeing, because we're seeing like, yeah, we're in the blind spot of humanity. Okay, I just want to put this out there. So this is me at my photo shoot with my look of blue steel. All right. So what do we do as forensic pathologists? We determine the cause and manner of death. We tell you how someone dies. I don't know why they die. Like, I don't know why someone would kill themselves and their whole family. I'm sure they have their reasons. I don't know what those reasons are, so don't ask me why. I can tell you how. I'm a scientist. We help identify the deceased if unknown. We collect evidence from the body. We document injuries or lack of them. We document underlying natural disease processes. We attend the scenes of death. We exclude other causes of death, and we provide expert testimony. My days are varied. Some days I'm up mountains, because that's where people like to hang themselves, you see, with the view. So some days I'm up mountains. Other days I'm in caves, because sometimes they like to kill themselves in caves. And this is a cave in Salisbury where 3 people died. Some days I'm at mass disasters where the world seems so big. This was a luxury train accident, and it was wild. There were electricals, there were people stealing bottles of wine. It was quite a wild scene. Other days I'm behind my microscope, like today. I was behind my microscope the whole day. You're the first living people that I'm making eye contact with. And I was looking at lung tissue today. So my whole day was, and the world was very small for me today. So on what authority am I here today? Well, I wrote this best-selling book, Autopsy, which has gone into 10 prints. It's been an extreme and wild adventure. Youngest person to have claimed to have read my book, age 7. Oldest, 96. A copy made its way to CMAX prison, and this inmate called Bennett, in his handcuffs, in his orange uniform, sent me a selfie. It even went to Marion Island. Apparently one of the courier companies delivers to Marion Island, and amongst the seal colony, he took a photo with my book. I developed a stalker. You never get the stalker you want in life. And it got translated into Russian. I was also part of this 8-part series called Lightning Pathologist, where 20 years of my lightning cases were popularized. And tonight I'll give you some of the behind the scenes of Lightning Pathologist. But yeah, this was Autopsy, bestseller. That's my Instagram if you want to follow me, profb_docmagic. Yeah, I got tons of selfies from people. I got essays from people. Mothers wanting career advice for the kids started contacting me. Yeah, it was wild. And then it went international. Beat Jordan Peterson on the rack for 1 week. And it got 5 stars in the Sunday Times. It made adult non-fiction shortlist. And as I said, translated into Russian. And then there was lightning pathologist, which was seen by some 2.2 million people. And yeah, I was very proud of this film. We'll get into this now. One of my students actually drew this for me after the series. You know, most students bring an apple for their teacher. This is what's happening now. And if you want, there's my lightning website, lightningpathologist.com, where I even sell merchandise. You can get an anatomically correct Ryan Blumenthal to play with in your bath. There's even little fluffy rhinos and when thunder roars, go indoors t-shirts. I have my YouTube channel at African Forensic Pathologist. And then there's my new book now, which has just launched, which I think is better than my old book. The ending will blow your mind. And it's called Risking Life or Death. And this came out on the 20th of July. Yeah, so far, rave reviews. Number 1 at Exclusive Books and Gifts, apparently. Oh yeah, and then on Thursday night, I should mention that I won the National Research Foundation Science Engagement Award for South Africa. Thank you. Yeah, it was very exciting. So good to be here. Yeah, and apparently the prize is a trip to America next year to attend the American Academy of Sciences conference. So quite excited about this. So anyway, what do the tools of my trade look like? This is what I work with. We're no like cardiothoracic surgeons or neurosurgeons. I mean, we just need this, and we can tell you how a body died. Some of our places have like X-ray machines, like a Lodox machine, which costs about 7 million rand a pop, and it's a 13-second stat scan of the body. I can tell you if there's a bomb in the body or bullets or whatever. So before we autopsy anybody, it goes through a Lodox. That's me in my mortuary regalia. Tonight we are discussing lightning. Now I know we're just coming out of winter here, and this is a very abstract topic for now. And even though the skies are now clear, there are thunderstorms ahead. And when this, then that. I'm here to show you what to do in those situations. Because this is a master class on lightning, we need to know how to spell it. If you leave this lecture and you do not know how to spell lightning, I fear my job is not done. So enlightening is what you'll be after tonight's talk, enlightened. Lighting is what happens before load shedding at 8 p.m. tonight. And we're discussing lightning. All right. I've got some hectic photos here that have never been seen before. This is from my private collection that I've collected over 20 years. Tonight is going to be special, I can assure you. No one has this lecture. These photos were taken in Johannesburg from over Khyber Rock. Incidentally, I contributed to the 6th edition of Wilderness Medicine by Paul S. Auerbach, which is about that thick. Paul S. Auerbach, the father of wilderness medicine, came up with his whole philosophy when he was flying in a plane and a passenger had an anaphylactic reaction to a peanut. One of the air hostesses said, should we dump all the fuel and land this plane at the nearest airport? And Paul came up with his philosophy. There must be another person on the plane with like a adrenaline, epinephrine injection, and there was. And he averted this environmental disaster. And he came up with his philosophy, which is you do what you can with what you got where you are. This is the whole philosophy of wilderness medicine. And this runs through the book. This book was so successful, I wrote a 7th edition. I was also in the 7th edition on the lightning chapter. I also contributed to the lightning and electrocution chapter in Electrical Injuries textbook. The lightning and electrocution chapter in the Handbook of Forensic Medicine, which is the benchmark for forensic pathology by Burkhard Modier from Germany. The 2nd edition of the Handbook of Forensic Medicine by Burkhard Modier. And I also updated the lightning and electrocution chapter in the Encyclopedia of Forensic Sciences. I've also written 39 articles on lightning and that. And despite all this, lightning does not read textbooks or journal articles, and I still know very little about it. And this is one of my favorite quotes. The sea gets deeper the further you go into it. Like, it's like the guy that studies lions and thinks he knows lions, and then he, like, at the end of his career, like, what is a lion? You know? Look, I'm not going into the science here. I'm a forensic pathologist. I'm a mere end user. So I'm not going into the physics. I'm not going into the electrical engineering here. But apparently lightning's formed in a cloud or something. And there's this theory called the dipole or tripole theory. And it's literally convective thunderstorms that cause this. And here's something for the field, just a little bit of practical advice. If you're standing there in the wilderness and hot air is blowing this way, you're going to be struck from that direction because it's getting sucked up into the cumulonimbus cloud. When it starts raining, cold air and cold wind comes out and gushes away from you. If cold wind's blowing this way, you're going to be struck from that side. So it's a good way to tell where the storm is in the wilderness. It's just a little thumb suck hack rule of thumb. Cool, eh? Okay, so hot air that way, you're going to be struck from that side. Cold air coming down this way, you're going to be struck from that side. Okay, moving on. Now, lightning does not read textbooks. It's a three-dimensional tortuous spark. Everyone thinks it goes for the highest object. That is not so. You don't know if this is striking before or behind the power lines. And also, it's illusionary. It looks like it's just coming straight down. Meanwhile, it's coming towards you, away from you, towards you. And that's why you get beaded lightning, because it superimposes on itself. Here's a scary photo from my collection. Lightning coming through the window, through the curtain. You think you're safe indoors. You're not really safe indoors. Lightning coming through the window. Lightning striking the ocean. You don't get whales and fish washing up dead on the beach because there's no potential difference. It just flashes over them. If you're floating in the water, you're cool. If you stand, you die, because then it will ground itself. Lightning evokes wonder. This photo was taken by a fellow honorary ranger of mine, and it actually knocked her off her feet, and she said, she started crying afterwards. I mean, you can just see how dramatic this is. 30 to 50,000 degrees centigrade. It's in a millisecond. And it's important to the earth and humankind. It's part of the atmospheric nitrogen cycle. It helps our plants grow. Part of the global electrical circuit. A possible mechanism for life on earth if it zaps the primordial soup. It's visually attractive. I always say we should have tours to South Africa for lightning. Why go to the northern hemisphere and watch those northern lights when we got the most dramatic weather phenomenon on the planet right here on the Highveld? Lightning also evokes wonder. This photo was sent to me by a guy called Dr. Neil Deploy. This was taken at 8 p.m. at night in Pretoria. Take a look to the right of the luminous channel. There's two birds flying there at 8 p.m. at night. What species they are, I do not know. Where they're going, I do not know. However, it highlighted bird migration for me. So this is off lightning. Some world records. I'm into my world records. My books are full of it. Longest appendix, quickest way to die, painless way to die. All that stuff's in my books if you're interested. But here's some lightning world records. The longest flash was 320 kilometers on June the 20th, 2007. And the longest duration for a single flash was 7.74 seconds south of France. These records have been beaten. The longest flash now happened 7th February 2022, 767 kilometers. That went over 3 states, Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. So what I'm telling you here is you can get a thing called bolt out of the blue. It's very rare. No thunderstorm, no clouds, and you can be zapped. It doesn't read textbooks. Here's some hardcore past stuff from the past day. The world record for amount of sheep killed by lightning, 1939 in Utah, 835 sheep. This is world record. And now there's questions that come into my mind. Is this a singular flash or multiple flashes? And why are sheep so pipperig? You'll see, the whole history of lightning and animals is mainly sheep. The next one is southern Georgia. This happened in 2021, 9th of August. 500 sheep were killed in the Ninotsminda region in southern Georgia. And there's a photo. China, 173 sheep killed. And in my case, so we had this big lightning conference called the ICLP, International Conference of Lightning Protection. It was held Cape Town International Convention Center last year. And it was our conference and I didn't have anything to present. How embarrassing. Sitting, my lightning campaign has been so successful. I've had no lightning deaths for 3 years. They're all indoors, not being struck. So it's like a win-win thing. So now I've got this huge lightning conference and nothing to present. And I'm sitting there and then the phone rings, as I'm sitting there. And it's this farmer from the Karoo, from this farm called Dunedin. And that morning, 93 sheep were killed by lightning. And he was a citizen scientist. And he left these sheep where they were, he let them decompose. And we filmed them and it's quite amazing. And we presented this, quite an exciting thing. Nothing predated them, by the way. Even this giraffe, one case in Pellabora, nothing ate of that struck giraffe. There's no post-mortem predation of lightning-struck carcasses. They do eventually come eat, but later. Fascinating. And then, this year, 21st of July, 2023, sheep again in Wesselbron. I think there were 23 of them. Lightning does strike the same place twice. The Empire State Building gets struck multiple times. Eiffel Tower, if you go to the top of the Eiffel Tower, you'll see little lightning conductors. Now, lightning, there's basically 4 types of lightning: positive, negative, upward, and downward. 90% of lightning is negative downwards. How do you remember this? Well, 90% of people are negative and downward. This comedian must be. Okay. About 1/3 of it is cloud to ground or ground to cloud. 2/3 are cloud to cloud. And most lightning happens, and here's the first fact for the day, between 3:30 in the afternoon and 6:30 at the night. That's when you're coming back from your walks and your hikes and everything. Okay. It is the most consistent weather killer. It is something that I, as forensic pathologist, do the most autopsies on. So in my 20-year career now of 15,000 autopsies, I've had 90 lightning cases, which I think is one of the largest on the planet. It kills more people than tornadoes, and that consistently over time. So how many die each year? 24,000. And how many are injured and survive? 240,000. So some people say for every 1 dead, there's like 10 injured. Some people say for every 3 dead, 7 injured. Depends where you are and what literature you read. This is what it looks like around the world. Okay, so now how do we measure lightning? We take this imaginary square kilometer of land, like a kilometer by kilometer, and we see how many times it gets struck per year. So you can see in the very Democratic Republic of Congo, that square kilometer of land gets struck 232 times per year. In Argentina, 54 times per year. What's happening in South Africa? We got 25 million ground strokes a year over South Africa. Pretoria, where I work, has got 65 to 67 thunderstorm days per year. The highest strike rate in South Africa is the Drakensberg escarpment, and they've got 26 flashes per square kilometer per year. So these are the 1994 flash density pictures. Nothing happening in Cape Town, you know. And this is what the 2006 map looks like. Each dot is lightning. Goes out to sea, and you can see where it's concentrated over the escarpment. Most lightning happens September to April, between 3:30 and 6:30, and the injuries on lightning are on the central trunk of the body, whereas electrocution is on the limbs and the hands. Just an interesting thing. Gauteng, we lose about 10 people a year here, and we have about 22 to survive. So interestingly enough, let's just talk stats here. I don't know who plays lottery here. The chances of you dying an unnatural death in South Africa going to buy your lottery ticket is higher than you winning the lottery. And I'm talking motor vehicle accidents, gunshots, everything, if you just look at the numbers. And the chances of you getting killed by lightning is higher than winning the lottery, statistically. If you look at the amount of lottery winners and the amount of lightning deaths and injuries. So that's just some stats for you. So if lightning strikes the sand, you get a thing called fulgurites. These are tube or bore-like structures in the sand. They sell a lot on eBay. And if lightning strikes a golf course where we are now, you get this ferning type pattern. If you have to do the scene examination of a lightning strike case, you got to look at the trees. You get the soot formation on the bark. And now these photos are from a ranger in Kruger National Park who's now demised. His name was Louis Olivier. This is from his personal collection. No one has these photos. This is from years in the Kruger National Park as a ranger. Trees that have been struck by lightning. This is a marula tree. You can see lightning coming down and stripping off the bark there. This is a clubhouse in Johannesburg that was struck. It causes millions of rands of short-term insurance industry damage every single year. Also, a house with surging. It causes the electricals to blast through the drywalls, caused a roof to collapse. Surging, rather unplug. Surge protectors don't work, just unplug during a hectic lightning storm. You can even see it blew the plaster off here. Even our friends, you know, they say it takes a village, it actually takes a grapevine. Struck by lightning. These are not raisins. These are necrotic grapes. Okay, so lightning's totally indiscriminate. It goes for everything, eh? And animals, mass herds get wiped out. I was on National Geographic for a very exciting documentary called Death of the Giants by Tigris Productions. This was seen by 22 million people, myself and Prof. Jandrell, and there were 5 elephants in India that were found dead. And the villagers wanted to kill the park owners because in India, these are not like gods, they are gods. And they wanted to know what killed the elephants. And then this led to an international investigation. And yeah, one was pregnant, by the way, and we worked out it was lightning that killed these elephants. So it's called Death of the Giants. Tigris Productions. If you ever want to look for an exciting film, you'll hear the full story. This tree was outside Ventersdorp in a small town called Reismeersbultse Wereld. And on the base of this tree, 189 dead kestrels, which were taken to Onderstepoort. Now, fascinating enough, evidence, like my new book is about transfer of evidence, low cards exchange principle. There's stuff you can see with the naked eye, the unaided eye, and there's stuff you need like special tools and light to look at. There was nothing to look at on these birds with the unaided eye. However, using special light sources, we saw singeing of the feathers. That's Professor Zephany Burnett from Onderstepoort. However, there's nothing to see macroscopically. This is the first case that really captured the imagination of the South African public. You'll find their graves outside Golden Gate National Park. Valerie Wilcox and Johan Bestendig de la Harp. Their full story is in the book Barrier of Spears, if you want to go read it. Fascinating story. They were 21 years old at the time. I think he was studying agriculture. She was studying medicine. It was his 21st birthday. They went to Mont aux Sources. He had a horse called Moscow. They had Boere biscuits with them. There were 12 of them. At the time, they stopped at the Bantu police station, and Valerie thought it would be appropriate to take a ladder with them from the station, which she put in the ox wagon. Then they went up, and they were looking at a view, and within 1 millisecond, on the 18th of December, 1932, Valerie, Johan, and the horse Moscow were struck dead. Now, Johan didn't die immediately. They used the ladder to take him back down to the Bantu police station, and there he died. 12 years later, Valerie's brother, Carl Wilcox, erected a plaque at the site that they were struck, so you can look for that in the region. But this captured the imagination of the South African public at the time. Young couple in love, and this tragedy happened to them. This is a tent incident that happened in Witbank. No one died here. However, it caused damage to the tent. And this is the most famous lightning incident in South Africa. 28th of October, 1998. It's very famous because it was filmed. No one died here, but 4 people went to ground. And with this, the WITS lightning team could find out where the lightning struck, who was on 1 foot, who was on 2 feet, and they worked out the mechanisms of injury, which is where I'm going with my talk tonight. So lightning can basically attach to you in 6 ways. I'm going to tell you how it hurts you now. It hurts you in 4 ways, but how it attaches to you in 6 ways. These are direct, indirect, side flash. I'll explain it all now. But everyone thinks that this is how lightning kills you, by striking you directly. This you'll see is only 3 to 5% of the time. And let me tell you, this is one of the quickest deaths you can hope to have in life. Other quick deaths, if you want, because you've got a forensic pathologist on duty tonight. So the quickest deaths, according to myself, and this is after studying 20 years, nuclear, you're out there, lightning, jumping into an active volcano, sniper with their own weapon through the back of your head, through your brain stem, where your vasomotor and cardiorespiratory centers are. You'll drop like a sack of potatoes. That's where I'll stop for now. Anyway, but lightning, you will not hear it, feel it, see it. You just will. This is one of the quickest deaths you can hope to have. And the scene is fascinating because it blows the clothes off. It ruptures the leather. I mean, can you imagine how hard the forces involved to tear a leather shoe? And my very first lightning case I ever had was of a young adult black female found dead in the veld. And her clothes were torn and tattered and strewn, and it looked like a rape homicide case. And after a thorough investigation, it turned out to be lightning. And that's what got me into this field, because I couldn't believe that lightning can cause this. Yet it does. It tears and tatters clothing, ruptures shoes. Anyway, that's the first way lightning can get you, which is the far minority. The second way lightning can get you is indirectly. So in other words, it strikes the electricals, travels through the electricals and gets you. And here's the first case published in the Lancet. This woman was on a corded phone, and these are called Lichtenberg figures. These are, I'll talk about them now, but these Lichtenberg figures were up and down the arms, and this is second mechanism of injury, through the corded phone. The third way lightning can get you is what's known as the side flash or the side splash. So lightning You go and seek shelter under a tree, which is not a good idea. It discharges on the tree, and then it discharges onto you. And here's my case with the third mechanism. This happened on the 12th of January, 2012, between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. 2 bongos were found dead in an enclosure. I'll tell you what bongos are now. They're very critically endangered, rare East African antelope, Trachylophus species. And I was called by the veterinarian, Adrian Tordiff, to the scene. So this was the enclosure. This was not at the top of the Pretoria Zoo. This is like 2/3 up. That's the enclosure. That's the tree that was struck. This is a view from the south side of the enclosure. When I went in, I do my scene examination, and there's the signs of lightning, low cards exchange principle on the tree. And at the base of the tree, 2 dead bongos. Get to the scene, there's a plume of froth at the nostrils of the one bongo. The one horn is like 5 centimeters in the ground. There's not a sign on their pelts. There's not singeing or anything. I attended the autopsies, like it's done hectically. I mean, these things weigh like a ton. Got to skin the whole animal. And yeah, fascinating stuff. But they were under the tree, and this was the third mechanism. So lightning struck the tree and discharged onto them. The fourth way lightning can get used, what's known as EPR, Earth Rise Potential or Step Potential. So in other words, you're standing there, lightning gets injected into the ground, like at 1 billion volts, goes up the one leg at 1 million volts, and the other leg's like at 500,000 volts. So there's a potential difference, and it goes through the legs. We humans are fine. Because what do we have between our legs? Uteri and prostata. Whereas animals, between their legs, hearts and breathing muscles. That's why whole herds of animals get wiped out by the fourth mechanism of lightning. Okay. But we're cool. We're fine. Bipeds. All right. Now, here's a very rare case that South Africans don't know about. This is from the archives of Louis Olivier. It's called the Silverfish Dam incident. This happened in Kruger National Park in the 80s. It was poorly documented, so very few people know about this. But there were like over 50 dead buffalo at that scene that were struck and killed by lightning. And these are the photos from Louis. And there were minimal signs on the buffalo. All right. It's called the Silverfish Dam incident in Kruger National Park. The fifth way lightning can get you, fascinating, was taught to me by one of my mentors, a guy called Ralph Anderson. So how he came up with this. So as lightning's coming down, you get these upward streamers coming up. Here's the very first case photograph from National Geographic of the upward streamer. You can see this tree is being struck by lightning. And if you look to the left, that lamppost, there's a little upward streamer coming up there. So what I'm telling you is you're at risk like 100 meters around the luminous channel. Everyone thinks lightning zaps you. You're at risk 100 meters around it. Now, here's the case that made Ralph Anderson famous. This happened in Modimolle, formerly called Nailstroom, on the 11th of November, 1994 at 2:30 a.m. There was a school from Johannesburg called St. Catherine's School. And what happened was there were 26 girls aged 10 and 11 years old, 2 adults and 7 dogs. They went to a place called Bush Pigs for a weekend school trip. There was no rain in the vicinity for months. They were sleeping outside until a light rain started. They moved into this 10 by 5 meter tent. Everything was disorganized, sleepy jumble. And at 2:30 a.m., lightning struck the tent. Now, this is the tent, right? You can see the pole that was stricken there. And all the gray, 4 girls died and 4 dogs died. And the reason was the upward streamer mechanism. Sparks came off these girls and these dogs and joined that pole. This was identified by Ralph Anderson. It's called the fifth mechanism of injury. And I've always given this talk, and I always talk about the St. Catherine's incident. And I was at Southwest Africa, and this young girl comes up to me, and she tells me she was girl X. And apparently she had a dog lying over her head and a camera between her legs. And that is why she survived. Because lightning is like a dose. It's injected into you. The dog took a large part of the dose, and the camera held onto a large part of charge. So it didn't go through her heart or lungs, and that's why she survived. Anyway, she has a Facebook group with all the rest of the girls. And now I promised the original authors, Cooper, Marianne Cooper, Erickson, and Cart and Anderson, because they published this in 2002 in the Annals of Emergency Medicine. I promised them that I'd do a follow-up study on these girls. So I got hold of this girl X, and I said, listen, I need to speak to your friends. I want to see how they're doing. Like, post lightning strike. Anyway, most of them have immigrated. They're in Vancouver, Australia, New Zealand. They're all over the world. Anyway, I tracked down Marianne Cooper, the original author, and I said, listen, I promised Ralph Anderson, who was 94 at the time, that we'll do this follow-up study. So anyway, we went through ethics committee of University, Illinois, Chicago. We had to fill in forms like this thick. Then as a courtesy, I went through University of Pretoria's ethics committee, also went through forms about this thick. What happens if the girls get triggered or whatever? It's hectic stuff to do research nowadays. Eventually, we get through all the ethics committees. We send off all these questionnaires to these girls and no response. Because there was this alpha female that said, like, where have we been for the past 19 years? So I didn't know how to respond to this. So I have some tea. And as I'm having my tea was the moment that Witbank tent got struck, like serendipitously. Remember that Witbank tent photo? So I just waited the next day for News 24 to put that up. And then I sent it to this alpha female. And then the next day, they all responded. And then 23 years later, by the way, 2016, we published a follow-up study of a group of children struck by lightning. And these stories are tragic. Some of them have got cataracts. Some can't walk, some can't talk. A lot have got post-traumatic stress. But this is how you close a case. So this is like 20 years work, for a case. So very proud of this work. And then there's my PhD, the sixth mechanism. This is the sixth way lightning can get you. So I was finding all this like ruptured eardrums, pneumomediastinum fractures, torn and tattered leather shoes, shrapnel from lightning. I thought, what's going on here? It looks like they've been by a bomb. Because in forensic pathology, do you know how someone's been exposed to a bomb blast? It's called Marshall's triad. So Marshall was a forensic pathologist during the times of the IRA. T.K. Marshall was his name. And he was seeing so many bombs and explosions, he came up with what's known as Marshall's triad. And the Marshall's triad is punctate abrasions, contusions, and lacerations. If you see this on the skin, you know they've been exposed to barotrauma. And I was seeing Marshall's triad on lightning victims. And this invoked me to do my PhD. Particularly one case. This was a woman from Esterus. She was walking with her two kids under a jacaranda tree in the rain. One child in front of her, one child behind her. Lightning struck the tree, third mechanism, struck her, and then struck the pavement, the concrete pavement. So this was the scene of death where I went to. On the pavement is this from lightning. And at autopsy, I find secondary missile formation, shrapnel injury. And I could actually work out how far apart her legs were when she was struck because of what's known as the shadow area. Because this exploded and the one leg caused a shadow on the other leg. So I could work out how far her legs were apart when she got struck. And these pieces of concrete went in for 2 to 3 millimeters. And I thought, lightning does this. So this caused me to do 8 years of electrical engineering, shooting lightning through ballistic gel and paper. And I came up with the sixth mechanism of lightning injury, which we can talk about now. By the way, the purpose of this presentation is to teach you people about lightning. All right, so how does lightning hurt you? 4 ways: light, heat, electricity, and barotrauma. The light has everything to do with the eye. If you're in the field and lightning strikes nearby, the eye gets injured. So you've got to keep the eye wet and closed. This is all the literature of lightning pathology on the eye from the entire veterinary and human literature. This is everything I found in literature that lightning can do to the eye. Uveitis, macular edema, macular holes, ocular neuropathy, eyelid lesions, corneal lesions, thermal papillitis, retinal folds, retinal vein occlusion, retinal detachment. However, the most common of them all, for some weird wacko reason, 6 to 8 weeks later, cataracts. Now, this is the latest thinking how cataracts form. So you got this cataract, you got this lens, okay, which is this protein lattice. Anything that injures it can cause it, like trauma, can cause it to become a cataract, whether it's diabetes or trauma, whatever. So, and it even happens in cattle and horses. If lightning strikes next to them, 6 weeks to 8 weeks later, 3 months, they develop cataracts. This is the most common eye injury with lightning. The heat, lightning causes fires. Now, before a fire can happen, it's got to get to its ignition temperature. Yet on the high felt, it does cause felt fires, wildfires, and it can catch, thatch roofs can catch a light from it. That's why we need our Faraday rods, eh? And on humans and animals, it causes linear first-degree burns, which follow the long axis of the body. You get the smell of singeing of hair. It's like a sulfur-like smell. This is not ozone. Ozone does not smell. Ozone is toxic. But the hair may be scorched or singed. And there's even cases in the literature of swine, hogs, which have caught alight due to lightning. This case was fascinating. It was presented to me as a hit-and-run pedestrian vehicle accident case. And when I did the autopsy, this is what I found. Superficial charring, and the clothing looks like it's been shot with a shotgun. This is what lightning does. And by the way, as forensic pathologists, we know what the most common brands of underwear are and what's trending and what's not. Also, synthetic material melts. Okay, natural fibers, you get like retraction of the heads of like wool, etc. Singeing of fur, and you have to use the magnifying glass at times because you can see little cinders. This may be the only evidence you find. This was a case. He says his kayak was struck by lightning. Meanwhile, we did a full forensic investigation, and we got this lightning network detection system around South Africa where we can like pinpoint where each lightning strikes. You know, it's called the Vaisala. We've got 19 sensors throughout South Africa, one in Lesotho. Anyway, we examined the scene and we found accelerant. This was a classic case of fraud, trying to blame lightning. You try to have his kayak and eat it too. Hilarious. Okay, electrical injury. If it strikes you and you survive, you can have what's known as cerebral salt wasting syndrome, and it can fry your electricals of your brain. So you're not the same person afterwards. They don't know who you are. Your personality can change. And then the weirdest out of all the phenomenon in lightning that fascinates me the most, they get a thing called Lichtenberg figures. First described by Carl Gustav Lichtenberg. It looks like you've been slapped with a wet tree fern. There's different names for it in the literature. Feathering, tree fern patterns, fractal graphic patterns, vital reaction, arborescent patterns. This is what it looks like. This is caused by like a tendril of lightning that flashes over you. And close up, this is what it looks like. Now, you have to be alive to see this. You don't see this on dead bodies. It's a vital reaction. You need to be alive for this. And what's fascinating about this, the latest theory as to how this happens, can I give it to you straight? So the latest theory is that when lightning's flashing over the body, you get this electron avalanche going down. And somehow there's interaction between those electrons and the iron in the hemoglobin of your red blood cells, which causes the vessels to somehow vasodilate and come up to the surface. And it lasts 3 to 6 hours and then disappears. That's the latest thinking from personal communication with the top experts. Don't kill the messenger. Then you get the unusual spark lesions. This was one of the survivors from the Witbank tent incident. Now, when I felt this, like I put on a glove and it feels like melted keratin. So it feels like a callus. This is the only injury he had on his body. You can see it's this unusual spark-like stellate type lesion. Fascinating. And then, okay, this was my last lightning case that I had about 3 years ago because of my successful lightning campaign, which is now cheerleaded myself out of work here. So this was my last victim from Pretoria North, a construction worker, found dead. And when I did my Lodox examination, I noticed that his zipper had exploded. And then these are the elements of the zipper. And these elements of the zipper had exploded and embedded and melted into his chest. And this led me to many conversations with experts around the world. So linked jewelry, so lightning's coming down from the sky or coming up from the ground. It sees this necklace as a floating electrode, and it holds on to charge. And you get these little sparks that jump between the gaps, and it superheats and it explodes. And sometimes it will leave an impression on your skin. So you sometimes see a burnt crucifix into someone. And in this particular case, the metallic elements embedded and melted into the skin. Be the cause of death. No, this wasn't the cause of death. Yeah, but it was just a fascinating thing. You know, so I need to mention, lightning is a millisecond, and I'm but a mere forensic pathologist. And Locard's exchange principle, which is what these books are about, every contact leaves a trace. You go to a death scene, you leave something there, or you take something with you. And the essence that is lightning is what we want to know about. We want to know what this thing is. So everything's about clues and looking and telling us about it. So this is why I put this case in here. Okay, then there's this thing called the DSM-4, for psychiatric diagnoses. And they've invented what's known as, and excuse my language, PEERLESS, post-electric lightning shock syndrome. So once you've been struck, you're not the same person. And there's certain criteria that have to be met to diagnose this. And then there's the barotrauma. Now, lightning, the blast wave, which we know is thunder. But before it becomes thunder, there's 10 meters where it's blast wave. And this blast wave can cause, it's like being next to a bomb. All right. And because it's three-dimensional, that's why you get rolling thunder, because you get the superimposition of sound waves coming off buildings in the ground. That's what like rolling thunder. And as I said, burst eardrums. All right, I'll show you how much pressure is needed to burst an eardrum. But you need about 29 pounds per square inch to cause a minor eardrum rupture. You need about 50 pounds per square inch to cause a normal eardrum to rupture. If you're at 72 pounds per square inch, you get chest and lung trauma like pneumomediastinum. If you're at 75 pounds per square inch, that like half of the people exposed to that will die. If you're at about 100 psi, you'll have 100% lethality. And over 100 psi, you get disruption. Now, with lightning, I've never seen disruption of a human. I've seen disruption of a dove at my one scene. The head was blown off. So I'm working out that this is from the bomb literature, that lightning, you must be exposed to under 100 pounds per square inch. This is what I did my PhD on. And you're at risk within 10 meters of the luminous channel. And it causes your clothing to tear and tatter. And then you get this thing called lightning pneumomediastinum. And pneumomediastinum is not like a pneumothorax. When I remove the sternal plate, it looks like bubble wrap behind the sternum. And the way this forms, and this is what it looks like under the microscope, you get rupture of alveoli. But basically, this pressure wave is coming down your airways, and then it travels in a centripetal fashion along the bronchovascular sheaths to the mediastinum, and you get like air bubbles. It's not fatal. First described by Macklin in 1939. It's called the Macklin effect. You see it in drowning, you see it in explosions, and you see it in lightning. And I had one crazy case, which I'll mention here. I had a psychiatric patient kill himself with a fire extinguisher in Pretoria. So he put a fire extinguisher in his mouth and switched this thing on. And this fire extinguisher had powder in it with monoammonium silica, a siliconaceous substance, which is very exciting to us forensic pathologists because it's birefringent, which means that if I looked at this lung tissue under the microscope, I can actually determine the tracks along the bronchovascular sheaths in the centripetal fashion to the mediastinum. And it's the first visual evidence of the Macklin effect since 1939 ever shown from this one patient. Anyway, so that's what happened in lightning also, just by the way. Now, if you're struck and survive, there's early complications, late complications, local complications, systemic complications. Without boring you too much, the reason you die, just by the way, is if it goes through your brainstem, if it goes through your heart or your breathing muscles. That's the main reason you die. If you survive, like another thing is called INCA, instantaneous neurogenic cardiac arrest. Maybe the pain is so extreme, you've got this knockout mechanism, sympathetic or parasympathetic dominates and you die. We don't know. All right, maybe it paralyzes your respiratory muscles. But the findings at autopsy are that of an asphyxial death, which looks like you haven't had oxygen. But if you survive, like if you lie in hospital and then die like 10 days later, they die of acute tubular necrosis, which is kidney failure, of a toxic ATN, not ischemic ATN, because of the myoglobinuria, damages the proximal tubules. They get intracardiac hemorrhages. I'll show you a case now of a 10-year-old girl, and multiple organ failure, mechanism unknown. So this was a 10-year-old girl. I went to the hospital to see her. There's always a bad sign when a forensic pathologist comes to visit you in hospital. But anyway, when I looked at the heart at autopsy, hemorrhages in the heart. So the channel must have gone through the heart. Are you with me so far? Yeah. This is Photoshop, eh? I just want to say a word which has never been said to anyone about lightning and aircraft. Okay, because you guys fly regularly. I want to just say one or two things here, if I can. I mean, if I may. So, look, lightning does strike aircraft. There's a whole engineering around lightning and aircraft. There's entry points and exit points. You're most at risk on the ground at takeoff and landing. Where lightning enters, like it enters in the front and then it like exits at the back. You get these like dots. So, like if you're doing the forensic science of a plane examination, you can see where the lightning like hopped and dotted itself on the plane. Like there's plenty of footage of lightning and plane. All right. Now here's something that is crazy. This was from 2012, and this is from the Boeing literature. This guy Plumer, he reported on aircraft node radomes being punctured by lightning. Now the radome is the nose of the plane. It punctures. I mean, look at this. This is lightning, eh? Crazy, eh? And now they've redesigned this with new polymers and new metals, so you don't get this anymore. Anyway, so what does this mean to you folks now as Exploration Society of South Africa? This is my build up, my background, just to get a strong argument. So what I'm going to tell you now is inescapable. So the golden thread that's been running through here, it's dangerous. Okay, so in America, they take it very seriously, lightning, the kids at school are taught here, like, when thunder roars, get indoors. It's one strike, you're out. You're driving on the highway in America, like you see this billboard. All right, you with me? So here's the basic rules for Exploration Society of South Africa, Off-Road Rescue Unit, Mountain Club of South Africa. Number one, no place outside is safe when a thunderstorm's in the area. You've got to know the weather of your region. Number two, plan your outdoor activities. Listen to the weather service. Our weather is so remarkable now. They don't have forecasting. They got ultra short forecasting. They'll tell you like it will rain at 4 p.m. Eh? Like they are that good. So listen to the weather station of your area, wherever you're going. If you don't have apps on your phone or any lightning warning systems, like rule of thumb, the 30-30 rule, 30 seconds between flash and bang, you're at risk. So between flash and bang, 30 seconds, you're at risk. And then wait 30 minutes after the last rumble before you carry on. What is a safe shelter? A safe shelter is anything inside a fully enclosed metallic surface area known as a Gaussian surface or a Faraday cage. Your car is brilliant, not the rubber tires, the metallic. So if you're in a cabriolet, you're not safe. Okay. Indoors, stay away from anything connected to power, telephones, cords, all right? Because we've seen deaths like people touching their TV or that woman with the corded phone. Cell phone, you're fine. Stay away from water or plumbing. Okay, bathing or showering. Here's some stats for you. There's more contact time when you're showering with the chrome taps than if you're in a bath, unless your foot's on the chrome tap when you bath there. I don't know how you guys bath there. But anyway, the bath is generally a ceramic area, so you're generally safe. However, if your foot is on a chrome tap, you're not safe. Yeah, but constant touching of chrome taps with water and the drain, you're at risk. So bathing is marginally safer than showering. Outdoors, stay away from high places, avoid tall, isolated objects, give yourself enough time to get indoors. Yeah, I just want to just run some 3 little quick case studies past you here, just to see how you think about something, because otherwise, this doesn't become real. It's a very theoretical way. So what to do? And these are real case studies that happened to me, and I want to show you how we thought about this. This was a British tourist watching leopards mating on a game drive. Thunderstorm happens. They wanted to watch the leopards. Some of the group wanted to go back. They endured. Anyway, next thing I get an email on my desk. He wants to sue the tourism company now for putting his life at risk. It was an open top vehicle. How do you think about something like this? What should you do? Anyway, so I'll tell you how we thought about this. We came up with what's known as the dangerous neighborhood metaphor. Some neighborhoods are more dangerous than other neighborhoods, and it goes about risk and risk awareness. There should be a policy or protocol beforehand, before you go on these game drives. It should be part of Fugasa and all these nature trails, because the inconvenience of stopping the sighting is less than the inconvenience of dead and injured game viewers. So we've got to start thinking in terms of this. This is the world in which we live in. All right. So my advice is go back to camp. We'll see the leopards mating some other time. Come back to Africa. That's the thinking about this. But this is how we think about it, okay? The inconvenience of stopping the rugby game is less than the inconvenience of dead and injured players. Next case study. You're walking in the bushveld, thunderstorm. What do? Like, what is the practical field advice? How do you think about something like this? And, here in South Africa, they creep up upon you, these thunderstorms. Literally clear skies, boom, in the middle of a thunderstorm. What do you do? So obviously this comes down to planning. You got to plan your walks, plan your times you get back to camp. If you're on the top of a mountain and you made enough bad mistakes and you're there and there's lightning striking all around you and there's what's known as St. Elmo's fire coming off your neck, which comes off the ship's masts, and you can feel your hair going up like this is not a good sign, eh? Not a good sign, eh? You want to try maybe get into the valley or under an underpass or under a bridge. The ultimate place is under Eskom wires, right, if they're still there. All right, but to walk directly under the Eskom wires, brilliant place to be, okay? If lightning is really striking all around you, like everywhere, and it's like, wow, from my lecture, you've seen it ruptures eardrums. So maybe you want to crouch down, maybe block your ears. You want to be wet. If you're wet, you get flash over. If you're dry, you die. You want to create as small a space as possible. Try to put your feet, your heels together. It's called the lightning crouch position. And you got to look at what's best practice around the world. What's happening in Yellowstone National Park. Because we have to have best practice for everyone. So, folks, I will open the floors to questions, commentaries, or criticisms. Thank you for your time.
Right, guys. Any questions? Mariam. So what happened? We'll just repeat the question for the guys
Online.
Online, yeah.
Right. I looked. Thank you very much for that very scary talk. I don't think I'm going to feel the same way in a thunderstorm ever again. What I want to know, I looked at your webpage about the lightning pathology, and it seems there is a degree of safety being in a car if you're caught in a storm. Now, what happens if you're on a bicycle somewhere outside and you can't get to shelter quickly? Is it safer to stay on the bicycle with its tires, or should you dump it and get away from it? That was one question. Another question was, with reference to linked jewelry, does it attract lightning, or wasn't that just part of the stuff that you found after the first mistake? Is there any chance that it attracts lightning?
All right. So the first question has to do with my world-class lightning resource website called lightningpathologist.com, which has got tremendous resources for the public. There's even stuff for pets, like thunder blankets, because pets get scared. So it's a heavy weighted blanket. Right. So the question was about bicycles and, do you dump your bicycle or do you take it with you? Look, you've got to be practical. I mean, if it's a 200,000 rand bike, I would not just dump it. No, you follow the wires, under the Eskom wires, or get to a safe shelter as soon as possible. Look, there's even talk about, whether you build up charge or you don't build up charge, that is irrelevant. And this ties in with your next question with the necklaces. See, lightning, when it's coming down, it's blind. Nothing attracts lightning. It's a blind thing that comes down. There's multiple leaders, and then one will strike, and then it will all come down. So whether you got the necklace or you don't, whether you're on the cell phone or you don't, whether you're on the copy or you're not, lightning's blind as it comes down. So that it's an anonymous random killer. So yeah, you just whether you got charged, whether you're running, whether you're walking, whether you're wet, whether you're dry, it's all random.
Can you tell us why it's safer under pylons under cables? I would have thought that if there's lightning going through, you don't want to be too close.
Yeah, no, look, so this has been discussed at length with committees. Yeah, so yeah, you asked why it's safe under the the electrical pylons. So look, there's what's known as the 45-degree angle of protection from like poles, etc. However, the wires, the thinking is like if it strikes, it will be taken by the wires. You're safer underneath the wires. So just keep walking under the wires. This is like the latest thinking. If you made enough bad mistakes, you're caught in a thunderstorm, you're walking home, rural Africa, wherever, walk directly under the wires home. Otherwise, get inside a safe. This is like, after much debate and discussion with minds immeasurably cleverer than myself. Just follow the wires underneath them.
Anybody else?
You're on top of the mountain and there's no tree, no nothing for a shelter. Should you crouch down and make yourself as small as possible? Then you're still the highest point.
Okay, look, assuming no one's hanged themselves on that mountain. Yeah, this goes back to my first joke in the beginning, just as a running gag, anyway. No, but anyway, some poor taste. But anyway, look, you want to get to the lowest part of the mountain as soon as possible. Otherwise, get to the other side of the mountain. So mountain climbers, like wet ropes, make excellent conductors. And then give yourself enough time to try and get under an underpass or an overpass or something like that. Remember what I told you earlier about that hot wind, cold wind. So you can make some like deductions now. Remember I told you hot wind blowing this way, you're going to be struck on the side, get onto that side of the mountain. Cold wind coming this way, get onto that side of the mountain because the storm's up there. And just be practical. It's wilderness medicine. You've got to make some judgment calls. Depends where you are. I mean, it's scary stuff. I've been caught myself on the top of a mountain in a thunderstorm. It's terrifying. It just becreeps you,
But it wouldn't make a difference if you keep on walking or if you crouch down. There's no difference.
Look, this once again comes down to risk. And, risk, there's a lot of stuff on probability, etc. You've got to decide where you are, use these basic principles that I've given you here tonight and make the best judgment call that you can. If you can get under an underpass, get down to the other side of the mountain, get into the valley if you can. I would not, the lightning crouch is if it's literally striking all around you. Just these are basic rules of thumb that you have to try and follow in that situation. But best to not get in that situation.
Okay. Somebody back. Yeah, Piers.
Would you advocate for the use of apps on your phone like Lightning? We rely on it when you screen outdoors. Should everybody have that app on their phone, right?
So all these apps are, it's a question about apps on phones. And by the way, the Afrikaans name for an app is a toep. A toep. By the way, it's a toepassing. Anyway, so these apps all use secondary data. So they're all the same. I cannot tell you which one is better than which one, but it's data, and data helps you make informed decisions. So I say in life, use as much data as possible. There's some times in life when you don't have all your data, like in relationships, but generally get as much data as you can before you make a decision.
All right, guys, let's keep it down to just one or two others. I'll be with you now. Yeah.
If I'm hiking and I've got hiking sticks of carbon or aluminium, what should I do in the event of I'm being fortunate about this?
All right, so the question is about hiking sticks, whether they're carbon or steel or whatever. Same theory as golf clubs or masts of ships. Lightning is blind when it comes down. It's blind. So it makes no difference. The chance of you being struck or the person next to you with or without them is equal. All right. There was a talk last year on certain types of trees being struck, like that have got resin in them and have got higher conductivity. Like a lot of these palm trees are being struck now and catching a light, like throughout Gauteng. But generally speaking, a little golf club, whether it's iron or carbon, whatever, makes no difference. The lightning is blind. Remember, you're as much at risk as the person next to you.
Okay. Let's
There's
do
one
sorry,
more.
Anna at the back. Let's do two more. So there were two questions over here, and then we'll just go online, and then we'll take go for dinner.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They're not on risk then. So you're saying that time is bad, so they won't be at higher risk
than ESSA.
Look, from Auerbach's Wilderness Medicine book, there's a little paragraph on mountain climbers, and it says, try get to the other side of the mountain, and wet ropes make good conductors. Otherwise, you're at risk as anyone else. So, and that wind story, hot wind, cold wind, and you got to be practical about this and pragmatic. Do what you can with what you got where you are. Make a judgment call. Yeah, paradoxically, because if you're wet, you get flashover. If you're dry, you die. When you at autopsy, you get a thing called the tiptoe sign. I've seen lightning exit through the feet. And yeah, if you're wet, you get flashover with the sweat, and it doesn't it seems to follow the internal pathways. It's flash over. So that's what we found.
Okay, just running out of time, guys. Just
So just an extension of the question of the red flash with the swimming, includes of swimming. We're asking the situation. It's a situation where we have not a lightning strikes. So if you've got a water polo match, what's probably the same. When you've got lightning come up, we didn't have the arms and do that next. But should there be a situation where we've got a close strike? Is it better to say stay in the water?
No. Okay, let me just kill this thinking right now. So we wrote the SARU guidelines, the South African Rugby Union guidelines. By the way, these rugby games that have stopped is due to myself and Prof. Jandrell. So we're to blame. But if a lightning's within 20 kilometers, you're at risk. And if it's within 10 kilometers, that game stops. No debate. Get them out the pool, eh? Yeah.
right, it's fine. So what's quite cool is we've got our portable internet, so we haven't lost our Zoom people.
Get them out.
The theory of the flash over and wet.
Get them out the pool. Get them out. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Let's just do one last question. There's a desperate hand doing it, and then we'll just quickly go online, and we're done by 3 minutes from now. Lewis, any questions online?
Yeah, there were.
Lewis, just hold on. One last question here, please. Yep. Yeah.
That's a little anecdote I want to share. I was caught in Lightenberg on top of a flat mountain, which has got an iron ore in it, and I spent the night in a tent, sitting in the middle with the tank permanently lighted. There must have been a strike every 30 seconds at one point. The following morning when I went for a walk, with a cup of coffee, probably about 20, 30 meters away, I could see where the strike had hit the rock, because there were boulders like this that were thrown up, and it kind of disappeared like a disappearing moral hill. Like it went smaller, I could actually see where it hit. And he went along, and I stood there and I thought, my tank was over there. So I've actually not observed it, but I've seen the effects afterwards of it creating little stories like this.
So you're lucky to be here.
Yeah,
Lucky to be
Very lucky to be here.
All right. Lewis, from your side, any questions? I see we've got a really nice online audience as well.
Yeah, we just had, we had a couple of compliments. What a fascinating talk, a number of those. One question was, what lightning warning apps would you recommend? But you actually answered that already. Graham asks, have you come across a pacemaker, a strike victim with a pacemaker, and how did that present?
All right. So in my personal series of 90 autopsies, I have not had a pacemaker. However, talking about electrocution and pacemakers, you get internal cardiac defibrillators, which have known to shock forensic pathologists. It causes a little, I think, 30 to 40 joule shock. And if we have an autopsy with someone with an internal electrical defibrillator, we literally call the manufacturers to come and, deactivate this before we carry on. And we always give it back to the families because these things cost like 90 to 120,000 Rand. So, but I personally haven't had one. Yeah. But yeah, that would be a very good, but it would, like theoretically, it would be considered as a floating electrode to the lightning.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Okay, cool. And then
there's one more.
Oh, sorry.
There was Penny Bradford who said she's a lightning survivor, was struck on a flat fishing boat in Zambezi. I put a life jacket on as the temperature dropped with the storm, and I'm sure it helped me. I was knocked unconscious. Extreme pain for a long time. Morphine only helped for 2 minutes. Muscle breakdown was extreme. And doctors, when I eventually got to the hospital, were very worried about kidney failure. Lots of electricity remained in my body for many months. High-felt storms didn't help with PTSD afterwards. Bottom line, lightning is not fun. And yeah, that's it.
All right. Who's got our wine?
I don't want to talk about books.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we'll talk about the books in a sec. Ladies and gentlemen, between our online audience and our present audience, we have just short of 100 people at our talk today.
Thank
So
you.
that's pretty cool, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. So for the online audience, please take yourselves off mute. Maybe just a hand of applause as well, please. And I think this was a fascinating talking one that is very relevant, and I certainly think we're super grateful.
Thank you very
So
much.
we've had the privilege of listening to Professor Ryan Blumenthal.
Thank you.
Right, and so promote the books.
Yeah. Please, we did quite a bit of effort here to get these books here today. You know, Mr. Sherlock here from Rosebank Exclusive Books. They are at apparently a little discounted rate here, but please, yeah, and I'll sign them. And apparently they're amazing. Yeah, this is the books. Yeah, this was 5 years work. And like I pitched it for everyone. This is a bit more of a deep dive. Yeah, there's some amazing stories, like 15,000 autopsies. And this is mainly like about African deaths. And this is about, but it's not about the books. It's actually about the reader. You'll see at the end, you're not the same human when you finish these books. So yeah, if you want to, they're here, and I'll sign them with my quote, which is, "The dust of Africa is in your bone marrow." That is my quote.
All right, guys,
that
just
I signed.
as a